Hello, 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 y'all. I am fortunate enough to be here today with none other than Mr. Frank King. I think, especially having done this twice personally, I know how hard it is to do this. Frank, what are you most well known for?
12 TEDx Talks, number 13, booked in November.
Boom. So if y'all are hearing that, you guys know how hard it is to actually accomplish that. So Frank, let's dive into it. What is your story? How did you end up as the world record holder for 12, soon to be 13 TEDx Talks? How did you go about doing that? You didn't graduate college and determine that, or maybe you did. Let's see. What was your mission? What was your story?
I have compromising photographs of a large number of TEDx event organizers involving farm animals. And so it's a piece of cake. I just email them a few photos, say, wouldn't the world like to know?
And it just works. Blackmail is how we get shit done these days, right?
Yes.
Easy.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
extremely motivating. No, I was stand-up comedy for 2.5 decades.
Yep.
I went from being a funny speaker to a speaker who's funny, started speaking on suicide prevention.
Cool.
And I figured nobody's going to take me seriously because I've been a comic for 2.5 decades. Why would they take me seriously? And I thought, aha, I'll do a TEDx talk. So I applied for one in Vancouver, British Columbia, got it on my first try, which is rare.
Wow. Yeah.
Then 2 other events called up and said, hey, do you have any more mental health topics? Yeah. So second and third I got invited to. I applied for all the other ones except one. A university in India in the state of Assam found me on LinkedIn and said, hey, we love your take on mental health. Nobody here talks about it that way. Would you do a virtual TEDx? So that's the rest of them I applied for myself and got them.
Cool. And so a lot of people I've talked to, TEDx speakers, they stop at one. Why do you keep going?
It's an addiction. Well, I got the first one, and then I got invited to the second 2, and then I just kept applying because I kept having another idea on mental health, mental illness, whatever, and did a little research and thought, well, damn if that's not correct. So I started applying again. And at some point when I started TEDx coaching, I thought, the more of these I have, the better my chances of landing clients as a coach. Because people go, well, what qualifies you to teach TEDx? Well, I have a dozen of them. You mean a dozen like 12? Yeah, that dozen. Correct. It gives you credibility in the TEDx coaching speaking market.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what are the objections you normally get when you're on a sales call with a potential client or a prospect? They say, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't know if it would make sense for me. What do they normally get from landing a TEDx talk?
Well, good question. Let's start with I'm not a public speaker. I'm not. And TEDx, actually, they'd rather you not be a public speaker. I mean, Toastmasters probably okay, but they're not high on professional speakers. So if you're just an ordinary person with a great idea and an even better backstory, they love a good idea, but they really like, ever watch America's Got Talent?
Sure.
A lot of the entertainers, most of them, amazingly talented. However, if you listen carefully, he spent 35 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. He's saying every day his goal is to be on America's Got Talent. Here he is, please. So there's always a great backstory to go along.
Sure.
Now, the reason that's important is because not too many new ideas these days. There's a lot of great twists on an old idea. That's their thing. TEDx says, look, give us a new idea or give us a really good twist on an old idea. And so I do have a new client, though, who actually has a new idea. The satellite fleet above us is about 40 years old on average, and it's aging. So we're going to have to replace those. The kid, 21 years old, is an honest-to-God rocket scientist.
Wow.
He's patented a way to launch satellites at a fraction of the cost and at a fraction of the environmental damage that will do. That should be elevated from TEDx. I bet it will. TED will pick him up and have him do it on the big TED stage at once a year speaking event.
It brings up a good point. How do a lot of people confuse a TED talk and a TEDx talk. As you know, they're two very different things.
Yep.
How does someone, I know TED is invite only. How does someone that wants to do a TED talk, how do they get there to that one a year event?
Well, you can apply actually. And, it's almost always famous people, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, those guys. But you'll every now and then see somebody you've never heard before who's got a really good idea. Brene Brown wasn't Brene Brown until she did a TEDx and got 1 million views. And then all of a sudden TED took notice and said, hey, why don't you come to, British Columbia in October with us to do the big TED. So I think this kid has got the idea, about launching satellites for a fraction of the cost. I think that will probably be a TEDx first and then catch the eye of TED. So, and if you don't know what TED is, it's a 3 to 7 day speaking palooza in British Columbia, Vancouver, in October. Again, it's mostly famous people, but just some people with great ideas.
And for the professional speaker out there that's already getting booked and paid to speak, what motivation do they normally have to why should they do a TEDx talk? What does it get for them?
Well, and having 12, I can tell you, I can't draw a straight line from one to a gig, not one of them. However, credibility, visibility, marketability, and if you handle it properly, and I teach my clients, it can be a great boon to your branding efforts if you use the outcome carefully and wisely and repeatedly, to build your brand, make the rest of the world aware of you. That's the way. That's the real benefit, I think, of a TEDx.
And when a speaker is already speaking on stages, getting paid, say, 5 to 25K for, as their speaking fee, how do they, if they give a TEDx talk on something totally new, how do they go about speaking on that idea? Like you in your first one, you were speaking on mental health. Were you getting booked and paid to speak on the same kind of niche topics?
Yeah, I only speak on suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety priority. And the TED just helped, again, give me credibility having been a comic all that time. People wouldn't take me seriously. And go to the bottom of my Gmail. There are 4 thumbnails. My first 4 TEDx talks are there. And they're everything you see of me in print, per se, like my LinkedIn profile, my website homepage. There I am in front of those big red letters. So it may not get you a gig, but if you're up against somebody who doesn't have one of those, conceivably give you a leg up on getting, I increased my fee each time I did like 2-3 TEDx's. I bumped my fee another $2,500. I started at $2,500 and now I'm $1,250, $12,500.
Sure. And what normally do you notice for your clients, the amount they can increase their speaker's fee per TEDx talk they give? Normally, what does that bracket look like?
I'd say about $2,500. If you start out at $5,000, which I recommend my coaching clients start out at $5,000, because that's kind of a price point nowadays in the speaking business. If people wet behind the ears come out and start charging $5,000. Start at $5,000, do a couple of TEDx's, bump it to $75,000. Do another 1 or 2, $10,000, and so forth.
Gotcha. And what does your ideal client look like? Obviously, someone who's a speaker, they could speak on so many different things. Are they speakers? Are they business owners? Are they aspiring speakers like your rocket scientist client you just mentioned? What do they look like?
All those things. Other speakers, coaches, authors. Sometimes you have an author who wants to speak. So A, they like to have a TEDx. B, they like to make money speaking. So that's generally the speakers, authors, coaches. Sometimes entrepreneurs with just a really great idea, like the rocket scientist is not a speaker at this moment. He will be. I think they're going to have an IPO or something, sell stock in a company using the, based on the patent that he has. I'm sure he'll be asked to speak at that point and paid handsomely for it. So it's, Toastmasters who want to go pro. They're ordinary citizens who have a great idea. They're passionate about something. The problem for most people is they're passionate about more than one thing. So we have to first order of business. I go, look, what one problem do you want to solve? Just one. Okay, great. In my case, suicide prevention. I want to solve suicides. All right. Now, who has that problem? What industry? And they will pay you to help solve it. So I picked the top 6 at-risk occupations for suicide. Okay, now we know what problem you want to solve and what industries, maybe 3 to 6 industries, what associations they belong to. Because the association conference, annual, people pay to come, they got money to pay you. They have to have a meeting every year just to put in the next board of director. And a lot of people pay a lot of money to come, so they've got a budget for speakers. That's my formula is problem. All right, who hasn't willing to pay you? All right, what are their associations? Rather than shoot at individual corporations. Because think about this. If you're at the front of the room speaking to a construction association and you're solving a problem that the folks in construction have, everybody in the room has that problem. So you're getting paid to speak, but you're hoping also to develop some spin-off speaking, consulting, coaching, training business from the people in the audience.
And for, let's say someone comes to you and they say, hey, I just published this book. I'm an author now. I want to do a TEDx talk to promote my book. That has a lot of, TEDx, if I understand correctly, they don't want people making money from it. And they've spoken about something in their book, then it's not an idea worth spreading. How do you kind of talk to the author about that when they kind of come to you with that opportunity or that set of problems?
Well, we need to have something in the book that is either new or a great twist on an old idea. And then we have to have 4 or 5 things you're going to teach the audience. You can't pimp the book. You can talk about some of the wonderful things in the book. You can teach the audience 3 to 5 things from the book. Also, you can mention the book in your introduction. You can mention the book in the playbill and your description of who you are. You can mention it again in the description of the YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel where the video lives. So there are several places where you can do something somewhat commercial without selling. You can't just, in the middle of your TED Talk, here's a link on Amazon and follow this QR code. No, they frown on that. But you can talk about the book, talk about the wonderful things in the book, especially if it's going to teach somebody something that will improve their lives.
And for the person out there, I've talked to a lot of people that have kind of had this concern or this objection, right? They say, well, it seems like anybody can give a TEDx talk these days. How do I know if the brand is still credible? What has happened to the credibility? For the people that kind of come to you and they mention that objection, what do you tell them?
I say, yes, a lot of people have done TEDx Talks, although it still has quite a bit of cachet, especially because the general public pretty much has no idea the difference between a TED and a TEDx. So, if I say I've got a TEDx, they may be thinking TED, and I'm not going to disabuse them. I'm not going to lie to them about it. If they ask me, what's the difference? I'll tell them. But if they don't, so I think it does still have quite a bit of cachet. And again, it's all on how you use it. On your website, put the big red letters TEDx Nashville behind you or whatever it happens to be. Same with your one pager and your LinkedIn profile and your Facebook page.
And for the person that comes to you, and I'm going to throw another objection at you, they say, hey, well, I want to get more speaking gigs from this TEDx talk, or we already talked about increase your speaking fees. So let's start with that. I want to get more speaking gigs. Does it only function as a step to get to that?
Yes, if you are willing to do your homework on branding. If you use that to, every talk I've ever done has a mental health element. So each one builds my brand as the mental health comedian. So first we determine your brand, and then we make sure that whatever TEDx you're doing speaks to that. So it's just not some random topic. And you can they would frown upon it, I suppose. But if you look at my sizzle reel, my demo video, it's just a selection of short clips from a variety of TEDx talks with music and graphics and effects or whatever. So yeah, I think you can, if used properly, you can eventually have more engagements and raise your fee. Okay. Nowadays, you get booked because they found you online pretty much. Okay. So if you can use the TEDx to increase, optimize your SEO, that's how you get booked. Not somebody stumbling on your TEDx on YouTube, but using it to brand yourself and make sure that when they type in suicide prevention, speakers, construction, my little narrow fanny comes up.
Okay. And I was talking to a TEDx organizer. Her name is Tanya Diamond. You might know her, and she works for a company that's that great. And it sounds like you know her. Is that right?
I emceed and performed at her last TEDx.
No way. Cool. Small world. So she said she's doing some consulting work for a company called Thought Leadership. I think his name is Taylor Conroy. And she said, TEDx as an entity, they don't like him because he's monetizing TEDx's brand. Have you kind of noticed that battle through the years of doing TEDx's yourself and then also having the business, helping people land TEDx talks, and kind of that branding of TEDx with them and their idea not being congruent with monetizing and that kind of thing? Or how have you kind of dealt with that?
Yes, well, a couple of things. They don't like me. I'm sure if you mentioned my name to Chris Anderson, who owns TED, he would tell you, he would know who I was. They don't like me because I'm a professional speaker. They don't like me because as soon as I did my 5th TEDx talk, they said, no, that one's not going up. So I have 4 TEDx talks on YouTube. The other 8 never saw the light of day because they don't like me. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like being a card counter at the blackjack table in Vegas. It's not illegal, but they really frown on it. Yeah. And I had several articles in Forbes about my TEDx coaching, which was a good idea at the time, but I think it put me on their radar. And so they went looking at all my website, my social media profiles and so forth. They sent me a letter. Said, look, you cannot say you're a TEDx coach. You cannot, it's copyrighted, trademarked, all that kind of stuff. So I got an attorney who works in trademark and copyright. And I said, look, here's what they sent me. Send them a letter, an email, tell them I'll do whatever they like. I'll change whatever they want. And of course, they sent me a list of things they wanted changed. So if you go to my TEDx coaching website, it says, hey, do you want a T-Talk? T-Talk. So they were happy. That was fine. They just said, as long as I can't call myself a TEDx coach in my URL. So I changed it to public speaker guru or something generic. Sure. Yeah. And I can put the photograph of myself at TEDx Durango on my website because I was there and that's my photograph. But that's as far as I can go with their brand. And even though I had on my website that I was not connected, there was a disclaimer: Frank King is not connected anyway with TED organization. But they said that's not enough. We value our brand. So I'm sure Taylor's had the same. Now Taylor's, I'm amazed he's getting away with it. I got a text from his organization saying, "We guarantee you a TED Talk." You can't guarantee anybody a TED Talk, but several TEDx coaching outfits out there are guaranteeing. Now, if you're putting on a TED Talk, you can guarantee somebody a spot. But unless you're doing that, I forwarded it to Ted. I said, "Hey, listen, I thought this was against the rules," but he's still doing it. So it's
I know he markets himself as a 4-time TEDx speaker. Do you think the reason he stopped it is because after 4, is it like for everyone, they don't put your TEDx talks on YouTube if you do more than 4, like you said, or is it just he didn't want to do more?
No, he didn't want to do more. Didn't want to go through the effort. I think because he stopped it for long before. I think they realized nobody should have, and there are other people. This guy's got 11 in Scotland, and I believe his are all up. So I don't know, but he's not a TEDx coach. So the combination of me doing that many and me being a TEDx coach rubbed him the wrong way. So when my clients say, "Hey, it says here, how'd you find out about this TEDx? Do I put your name?" No, dear God. Don't put my name. But you Googled it.
Yeah.
By the way, I get a few clients from the Thought Leader vote. Yeah, I've gotten a couple of ex-clients where they've already paid them. They just, it's not a scam, but they just didn't like the group format, group coaching, something. Or I just got a client because she said, they were just so salesy. I mean, I felt the pressure. They got a sales force. I mean, that's what they do. They work on commission, I'm sure. I understand. I've done sales. But yeah, it was just a little too salesy for them. Although, I mean, they get a lot of people, a lot of TEDx talks. They do a good job, but, not everybody's favorite flavor.
That's interesting. What other TEDx coaches or people that help you get TEDx talks are you connected with that are kind of in the eyes of TED, like Taylor Conroy, is there some other names out there?
Not to my knowledge. I think Taylor and I have the highest profile. He has obviously the highest profile because he helps, he's helped hundreds of people get mom, just one-man operation. There's a woman somewhere in the South. I had spoken to her. She was involved with the Atlanta TEDx, which was one of the first TEDx Talk back in the day. Yeah, I can't think of her name. She's in the National Speaker Association, and we chatted, and she goes, "Why are you still doing TEDx? They're not going to put you up." I said, "That's not my call. It's up to the local TEDx organizer whether they have me on or not." And then, I mean, I can't say for sure they're not going to post my TEDx. I just know that they haven't. And so what I've done is I've donated a videographer to each of the events since then. So everybody on all the speakers get a third camera angle because I turned the video over to the organizer, and I get a bootleg copy.
There you go.
Now, I can't put it up on YouTube, but I can, put it on Vimeo where it's not public facing.
Sure, of course. And so ways that you're obviously very familiar with getting authority and credibility through a TEDx talk. If you're very familiar with that, you've probably checked out other ways that people as professional speakers or business owners that are looking for that credibility. What other ways do you think are ways they can get that similar kind of credibility or more that aren't TEDx talks?
Oh, that's easy. I suggest my clients do 2 podcast guest appearances a week in their topic area. Don't do your own podcast. Too much work. Just be a great guest on a couple a week. And, they post it, then they send you the link, the swipe copy, and the image. You post it on your social media. So you're getting twice the value, toward SEO. Number 2, I would pick a social media platform, one where your clients are, and go deep, not wide. I chose LinkedIn because that's where my clients are. I do 5 posts a week, 2 videos, 3 text posts every week, and 2 newsletters. And they're all educational, all on how to make money speaking. No sales, just educate, and be top of mind. Be known before you're needed. So people seeing you show up at 9:00 every morning, 5 days a week with a post and then 2 newsletters. And on LinkedIn, have your team, if you have a team, when you're connecting with people, connect with people who have keywords in their profile that would define your ideal client. I look for the word speaker in their profile. I've got 7,000 or 8,000 first connections with the word speaker or Toastmaster or whatever in their profile. So when I launch my newsletter, very specific, how to make money speaking, I guess it was this time last year, I've developed 4,700 subscribers in a year.
Wow.
I mean, in the first hour and a half, I got 797. I just about pooped my pants. I thought I'd get a couple of dozen every day, maybe. But apparently because it's so niched to what I do and niched to the people I'm pitching, that's why the newsletter did so well.
You're getting me thinking about this with podcast guesting. Besides that, what are other ways that people can kind of establish that credibility and authority like TEDx?
Pick a platform, go deep, not wide on social media, do a couple of podcasts every week. That's pretty much my formula, my clients. Those are two things I asked them to do. The catch is doing 5 posts a week, 2 video and 3 texts and 2 newsletters a month. Not many people are willing to spend that kind of time. My advice, find a good VA and teach them to do that. I signed up with a LinkedIn marketing company. And when I decided to go deep, and I've been getting a couple of, 3 notifications every morning. I woke up that next morning and there were 57 notifications.
Wow.
And I realized very quickly that I was never going to be able to keep up with sending anybody who asked my lead magnet. I hired a VA for an hour a day to make sure everybody gets my lead magnet. And then I thought, well, I need outbound. So I hired a VA for another hour a day to do outbound on LinkedIn.
$5 an hour each, something like that.
$15 an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. And I hired a LinkedIn marketing company. They recruit, train, and manage, so I don't have to manage them. And they're up on the software that this LinkedIn marketing company uses. And the third hour I hired her for because when I got that many subscribers in my newsletter, I wanted to send out a little video to everybody, a little short video thanking them for subscribing. No way I could get that done. She does another hour just sending thank you videos to my subscribers. So yeah, I would say get organized. Don't just hire a VA, hire a VA, company where they'll manage, recruit, train, manage.
Interesting.
VA.
Do you want to give that LinkedIn marketing company a shout out? Just for those people out there that are wanting it?
Yeah, Clout, C-L-O-U-T, Clout Selling, S-E-L-L-I-N-G, Clout Selling.
Cool.
And they got, I've got almost 6 million impressions on my posts in 33 months, made about 140,000 in conversions.
Nice.
India reached out to me to do a TEDx because they found me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn called me.
Wow.
They said, Frank, we're doing an article on how do you become a keynote speaker. Do you want to contribute? I said, first a question. I didn't realize LinkedIn had a phone. Yeah. So I did that and it made one of the top 10 text posts that week on LinkedIn. And the e-learning course on TEDx that I'm cobbling together, they found me on LinkedIn. They go looking for someone who's got some notoriety in a particular field. And they saw the 12 TEDx talks. And then they did the research and they figured out that not anybody out there is offering a comprehensive e-learning land a TEDx course from how do you find the application all the way through performing it and then leveraging it and monetizing it. So I'm a bit of a unicorn in that way. So that's why they reached out. Normally they charge $4,000 plus 30%. They said, look, man, you got to market to yourself. There's nobody else in the niche offering a comprehensive course and you got 12 TEDx talks. So we'll do it for nothing except 20% of whatever we sell. I'm supposed to say no to that? Yeah. So yeah, we've been working on it and we're getting there. Should launch probably the end of April.
Cool. And for those people out there curious, where can they find that? That's
a company called Course, C-O-U-R-S-E, Edge, and the E is at the end of course and the beginning of Edge. So it's one E. It's C-O-U-R-S-E-D-G-E, courseedge.com. In Morocco, based in Morocco. Brilliant young man. I mean, you should have an old lawyer and a young social media marketing person because the old lawyer knows his way around the courthouse, or she does, and a young social media and marketing person knows their way around the internet.
Yeah. And there's certain talks coming out that, you look at things like the Roman Empire, all these great things, they can be temporary, right? Looking at the longer term vision. Do you see something replacing TED and TEDx in the future?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I represent them.
Please share.
Yeah, it's called Speak Event, speakeventsingular.com. I'm doing one on the 20th, actually, myself.
Wow.
The guy was an organizer for TEDx Farmingdale, New York, and just got tired of the TEDx bureaucracy and said, I can do this better. And so they created Speak Event. It's a 6 to 10 minute storytelling format. First third is the truth, your story. Second third is transformation. How did it change you? Last third is impact. Okay, what was the impact of all that? 6 to 10 minutes. And I'm doing one on resilience on the 20th is a theme. And we're probably going to do 75 of them this year. And in the fall, at Madison Square Garden, they're putting on a giant one.
Wow.
So if you do one of the smaller ones, you're in the running to do the Madison Square Garden one. And it doesn't have the cachet of TEDx, certainly. Not yet. Eventually, I think it will because they're very well organized and funded. And, they made it a year. That's always a milestone. And now they got 75 on the drawing board for this year.
And so a lot of TEDx organizers that I've spoken with, they talk about hibernation, that after they give their TEDx event, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so done with this. I don't get paid anything. I was volunteer. And I always thought, why is there not something out there that exists where people can make money organizing an event of similar kind of caliber of TEDx? Do the organizers of Speak Event do they make money from it? So they got a leg in it?
Yes, they do it either in-house at their studio on Long Island, Farmingdale, or they will work with a local producer. Somebody's got a theater, wants to put on an event, and they split the door 50-50. So the organizers can make money doing it.
Cool. and seeing what's going on with, let's say, big corporate media entities. I'm not going to say any names here, but you kind of figure who I'm talking about there. You see podcasting becoming much more of a common way people are getting information. Podcasting, YouTube, socials. I know people under 50 are under 40 are under 30 are spending more time getting their information from alternative sources that are not, news, right? Or as we
Yes.
know, news. What do you see happening with that trend of podcasting and the way people are actually getting information?
Well, 90% of podcasts, new podcasts, are gone within 3 episodes.
Really? Wow.
An event where I talked about TEDx and making money speaking. There's a woman there who helps people build podcasts and avoid that fate. But she said, 90% of all podcasts, 3 episodes and out.
Wow.
And then the 90% of the remaining ones, take that number again, 90% of those are gone after 20 episodes. I think in part because I saw one the other day advertising on one of the podcasts, like on Facebook. They have a Facebook page for guests.
Sure.
And in the podcast, we talk about anything. Why would I listen to a podcast about anything and not knowing what I'm going to get when I tune in?
Yeah.
That's why narrowcasting works. I love 48 Hours, 2020, Dateline. It's a murder mystery. I know exactly what I'm going to get when I tune in,
Yeah.
So the riches are in the niches. I've got a friend who does a podcast on modernist architecture from the 50s and 60s, the kind of Mad Men, that era for the TV show. And it's the number one modernist radio podcast in the country, but there's only like 3, but it has a huge following, tens of thousands of downloads, because if you either like modernist architecture, you have no idea what he's talking about. It's like Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk is profane. And I have friends who won't listen to him because, he drops the F-bomb all the time. And I say to them, look, you're not his audience.
Yeah.
In radio, they call that a disqualifier. It's attracting the people that want to be there and driving off the people who don't. You're not his client. You're not who he's looking for. That's the beauty of podcasts. Either you like what's going on and you understand and you are a fan of the topic, or you're not. And I think the mistake that podcasters make, they try to get advertisers. Go for sponsors. Just get sponsor money. Just take money from somebody. I got a client who is the doctor whisperer, and she runs practices for physicians, and she has physicians on, and the bank in that town wants physician business. So they send her $1,000 a month sponsorship money. So don't go for advertising, because advertisers are going to want to know, how many downloads, how many subscribers, blah, 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 blah. But just give me $1,000. We'll run a little pre-roll, post-roll. I'll do a live spot in the middle, easy.
Let's dive deeper into that. And I know we're almost out of time here, but for the podcaster they give a TEDx talk, then they're building out their podcast. They've passed 3 episodes and they passed 20. They're at, let's say, around 50, somewhere around there. And they think, oh, I just listened to Frank talk about sponsors. I didn't know I could get sponsors. How do they go about landing a sponsor for their podcast?
Well, you have to look at who serves the people that you are reaching. In her case, she's reaching physician. So you want vendors who want physician money. If you went to a doctor's convention, there'd be an exhibit hall. And everybody in that exhibit hall, whether it's software or hardware or staffing or accounting or whatever, wants physician business. Those are the people you're looking for, who want to get in front of the client in a positive way, but not running an ad, on television or on the radio or even on social media. You want those ears hearing your name over and over. So in radio, they say, look, when somebody listens to radio or a podcast and there's an ad, roughly 3% of the people are going to need whatever they're advertising that day. But sometime in the not too distant future, 97% of those people who've tuned into that podcast are going to need whatever they're selling that day. So it's just a matter of being known before you need to be top of mind. That's one of the reasons I do 5 posts a week on LinkedIn and the 2 newsletters. So if somebody decides, I want to be a speaker, I want a TEDx, and they've been going, they've been seeing me over and over and over and over and over again on LinkedIn, just teaching them stuff about TEDx and making money, then hopefully I'm top of mind and they reach out.
And now let's take it one more step further. Someone's done the TEDx talk. They've started the podcast. They've passed 50 episodes. They've landed a sponsor. Now they're trying to get booked and paid to speak. And they're kind of investigating all these different ways of doing that. They see, oh, I've learned a little bit about speakers bureaus, and I've seen some of Frank's content about how to do that, 2 different ways to do that. What kind of next step, if someone is looking to go into that space after they've gone through that series of steps, do you think is the right step for them?
Well, do your best to get on the roster of speakers bureaus, although that's very difficult because everybody's brother wants to be on there. If the speaker bureau asks you for money up front, run like the wind. They work on commission only if they're legit. My advice is figure out what problem you want to solve or what problem you're solving. Figure out who has that problem, 3 to 6 industries. Figure out what associations they belong to. And do this. Call up the North Carolina Pavement Contracting Association and say, hey, let me speak to the editor of your newsletter. I'd like to contribute an article to the newsletter. And in the conversation with the editor, you say, I did some homework and you guys got a convention coming up in December. I speak on this topic. Who is it at the association who books the speaker? That's the trick. Figure out who it is that makes the call, that books the speakers. And by giving value first in an industry that you have a solution for a problem they have, and you're helping out the newsletter editor because they got to fill those pages every time they run a newsletter. That's what is go after the state associations of the people who have the problem you want to solve.
Okay, cool. Do you see what is happening with TikTok, Instagram, Reels, all this short form content? How do you see that affecting LinkedIn over the next, say, 6 months? Or is there no effect?
I think it's apples and oranges. If you look at the ad revenue for Facebook and Instagram, it's 100 billion, 200 billion, whatever it is, ad revenue. If you look at the ad revenue for LinkedIn, it's like 3 billion. That's why LinkedIn, because they're giving you that organic reach for free. I don't run any LinkedIn ads. They're expensive and not particularly effective. But the organic reach is such that, that's their unique selling proposition, I think. Vaynerchuk said that.
Mm-hmm.
But look, now's the time to get on LinkedIn because all that organic reach is free. They're going to figure out someday they can sell that. So get in there and get at it now.
Well, let's say I'm listening here and I've been getting so much value from what you've been saying, so much so that I'm thinking, where the heck can I find this guy on the internet? I want him to be in my inbox every week. I want to see his socials accounts popping up on my feed. Where can they find you?
howtomakemoneyspeaking.com, which, by the way, I bought this year. I could not believe that was available at 2024. My wife goes, well, just buy howtomakemoneyspeaking.com. I'm like, right, that's going to be available. Oh my God, it's available. Or go to LinkedIn, Frank King Comedian. You can personalize your LinkedIn URL. So just type in Frank King Comedian and I'll pop up. You'll see my LinkedIn, but you'll see right away how to make money speak. I tell my students, my clients, look, when somebody lands on your LinkedIn profile, I want them to see one thing you do better than anybody else. I don't want to see you do real estate, Bitcoin, supply chain. You are the expert or thought leader in that one thing. And make sure your LinkedIn profile has one sentence about you. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you see one sentence about me, and then questions about what the client wants. Mine says, Frank King, 12 TEDx Talks coach. Do you want to make money speaking? Do you want to make money speaking full time? Do you want to make money speaking full time, make a difference? Those 3 questions. And it's what the client wants. I want them nodding, yeah, yes.
Almost like it's a landing page that's live and interactive.
Yes. Most people put all the great things about themselves in the profile. I think you should put one line about you and then ask. I've got a client who does a thing about, he's got a program on recruiting for contractors. And it just says, do you want to hire and retain top talent? And there's a shortage of employees or top talent in the construction business. So if you got a construction business and you read that, do you want to know how to recruit and retain top talent? You're going, yes, I do.
Last question I got for you here. Of all your experience, what is one nugget of value that you would want to tell the aspiring speaker, the professional speaker, or the business owner / entrepreneur that's speaking to grow their business?
I've already actually covered that, but I'll cover it again. The riches are in the niches. When I started in the mid 90s as a speaker, meeting planners would book a Jack or a Jill of all trades. You had a half dozen keynotes, pick one. Nowadays, I believe they want the thought leader or the expert. And so when they land on your site, that's the reason I have landing pages. It's mentalhealthcomedian.com/suicide prevention speaker construction. So when somebody types in suicide prevention speaker construction, I come up. And that's all they see. They don't know I speak to dentists and veterinarians and physicians. They just see I am a construction suicide prevention speaker. So I believe that's what they want. If you want to join the conversation in the meeting planner's head when they arrive on your page, I want them to see exactly what they're looking for, what they searched for.
Boom. Awesome. Well, if y'all been listening and you have found this so valuable, you guys know what to do. Share this with a friend, a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring speaker, or a seasoned professional that is your colleague that you think would find Frank's knowledge that he's been nice enough and kind enough to share with us today valuable. And we'll go from there.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe and tell your friend. If you did not enjoy this podcast, well, we hope you have no friend.
There you go. End it with a laugh. I love it. Thanks, Frank. Cheers, y'all.